Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm reviewing a very last minute spontaneous viewing of Into the Woods. So this is the same production that was on Broadway for a limited engagement at the end of 2022, launched its tour at the Kennedy Center, and I love the Kennedy Center. So I looked and I was like, ooh, I don't know if I want to pay that. But it also went to Philadelphia, and my kid was hinting, oh, I really want to see Into the Woods. And I looked and I was like, you know what? You only live once. We got to do it. So this playbill might look a little funny. It's because I had to make it myself. I've never had this. Have you ever had this happen? Have you gone to a show where this is what they give you? Like, what is this? So I made my own cover. Because I love the cover art for this exact production. So I wanted also, this is a show that's been revived a couple times, so I wanted to help myself remember which version I saw. So this is what we're talking about today. So I went to a different theater in Philadelphia than the one I've been going to. So I'll talk about that as well. I'm a huge Sondheim fan. I love Into the Woods. I've never seen a professional staging of it before. I've seen a lot of schools do it, uh, but and I've seen the movie. The movie's pretty good. Um, they really mess up Act Two, but Disney with their "we can't kill Rapunzel." Sorry, spoiler alert. But I mean, this is like from the '80s, so if you don't know the plot to In the Woods, sorry, spoiler, spoiler, spoiler. Um, I am so glad at the last minute we decided to go see this show. It was so good, so good. I even hit the merch cart, which I normally don't do. I'm not really into merch that much, but I saw this bag. Isn't that gorgeous? I love this logo so much. But that's not the reason why I bought it. I bought it because oh, look at that. I just love it. Check, check, check. So that amuses me greatly. So had to get it. It wasn't very much. All right. So we saw it at the Miller Theater in Philadelphia. Pretty solid theater. I always, when I buy tickets, I bring up this handy dandy website. If you don't know about it, it's called A View from My Seat. So I like to click on seats while I have like on one screen, and I have a view from my seat on another screen, so I can compare. Like, oh, these tickets are a price I like. How do they look? And I got the first row of the upmost balcony. It has three levels, so it has orchestra, then balcony, and then I think they called the top one Family Circle or something like that. And it didn't get good reviews. A lot of people were like, "Oh, this is a crappy seat," and I'm going to share a photo of what the seat looks like. But this is one shot where, yes, the lights are in the way, and there's a safety bar, da da da. But there's another shot. It just depends on how tall or short you are. I'm a short person, and so I realized really quickly that if I lean back just a little bit in my seat, because of the way the bar frames the stage, it didn't actually hinder me. And my kid, who's only 12, loved these seats. She's like, oh, yay, no one's in front of us because, we're short. Anyway, let's get to the show itself. So, what did I like? Well, the cast was amazing. I love this cast. I adore, I mean, the characters are just so rich. I don't see how you could mess it up unless you just straight up don't have talent. But we really loved Little Red Riding Hood. Let's see, Katie Garrity. I'm going to put her name here. She was so funny. I mean, I've seen a lot of Little Reds again, and oh, I've also seen the pro shot from the original Broadway production, starring Bernadette Peters. So maybe I never sought this show out because I'm like, oh, well, I have the pro shot. Who needs anything else? It's so much better in person. Just go see theater in person. Have I mentioned that before on this channel? I think I have. Anyway, both the princes, Gavin Creel, who plays Cinderella's prince and the wolf, Jason Forbach, who plays Rapunzel's prince. He also has played Raoul in Phantom, and I'm sad that I didn't see him in that because he's so good. I mean, they're all good. The real star of this show, however, is Milky White. Oh my goodness. So this is an adaptation that really embraces the puppetry. Someone's been watching Lion King. I like that we live in an era where we're not trying to hide the puppeteers. So the person operating Milky White is visible. They're not doing anything to hide it. Obviously, and they're there. You know, they don't just move the thing. They're very expressive. They're all like, you know. So the puppeteer was very good as well. Every time anything happened with Milky White, the audience really reacted. So like when Jack says goodbye, everyone was like, "Oh." So Milky White steals this show. Very, very well done. So love the cast, love the costumes. They had really awesome. What was cool about it is it was very colorful. They didn't have just one hue going on, and they kind of paired things. So like Jack and his mother have like greens and blues, and Cinderella has like yellows and oranges. And Little Red obviously is in a red cape. But I like that Rapunzel was in pink and her prince was wearing a red jacket. And I like that Cinderella was like in a yellow orange dress and her prince was in a yellow jacket. So like they were grouped together, you know? So I liked the color families of the costumes in this show. Very nice, very well done. And the scenery was very minimal. I read some reviews when this was on Broadway, and people were complaining. They're like, I'm paying all this money, and there's like no set. So the physical space for this exact production, this is another one of those shows where they have the orchestra up on the stage, and they have like staired platforms that circle them. So the cast can do a complete circle, only it's a square around them if they want. And so even though they had a walking platform all the way in the back, they didn't use that a whole lot, except for those like interval moments where each character comes out and says like one little like, the slotted spoon catches the potato. Oh. And or Rapunzel just going, oh. She would just walk across the back. And so they have some tree trunks that were suspended from the air that came down whenever they were in the woods, because they're actually not in the woods the entire time. And they had a cyclorama in the back, a big white piece of fabric, if you don't know what that is. And it lit up different colors with lighting, of course. And they did project a moon because this is a ticking clock show. So they had a moon to show the passage of time. At the end of Act 1, you do see they did have a real beanstalk growing up. And at the top of the show, since you're allowed to take pictures of pre-show, I will share that, as hopefully it's not too blurry. We open in 3 households: Cinderella's house, Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk's house, and the baker and his wife. So they have just a few props sitting on the stage to represent the 3 houses, and suspended in the air above them are these cute, tiny little models to show each house. And it's hard to see in the picture, but in person, you could see that Cinderella is like in a grand chateau, like with many rooms. And whereas Jack and his mother are in a cute little cottage, right? So they made all 3 houses nice and different. But obviously, once they went into the woods, those flew away. Not a lot of scenery, but this is a show that doesn't need it. I think because the cast is so big, like you have a lot of characters that you're trying to keep track of. I think it's better to do it this way. That way you're not distracted by all that. So I'll tell you something I don't like because I already brought it up. I just didn't bring up the fact that I don't like it. I thought it was weird that the orchestra was on stage. This is a very popular trend. The Revival of Chicago is the first place I ever saw it, and they still do it. Come From Away has their band on stage, and Six has its band on stage. So it's like, this is like clearly just a thing. If that's not a bad thing, but I thought there'd be a reason behind it. I feel like thematically it works for Chicago, and I even think thematically it works for Come From Away. Six, because it's more of a concert. They're trying to have that pop, rock kind of thing. Even that makes sense. But thematically, I didn't get why the orchestra was on stage for this show. Like they didn't. I thought the characters would interact with the orchestra. like a lot of that fourth wall breaking kind of stuff. They didn't do anything like that. So I'm like, okay, it's not a problem that they're on stage, but why are they on stage? What's the point? So that's a nitpicky thing, but it did bother me if you want to know what I didn't like. I'm trying to think of other things I didn't like. So while I think about that, I'll continue with the what I do like list. Milky White was not the only puppet. When Jack goes up the beanstalk again, he brings down a hen. That was a puppet. And the giant that I thought was going to just be a voice on stage, because every version I've seen just does the voice off stage thing. They actually had these giant puppet shoes, separate. They weren't tied together, so it'd be like one person holding the giant shoe and they go step, and another person with the other shoe would go step. So it's like two people pretending to be shoes that are walking. It sounds really silly, but again, live theater, it works. So I was like, oh wow, that's different. And at the end of the witch's big musical number, The Last Midnight, she vanishes. And it's not clear, because every version I've seen of this kind of, it's open to interpretation of what happens to her. Like, does she die because she throws away the beans? Or, how she says, I'm leaving you alone, I'm out of here. Did she just cast a spell going, and I'm off, like, whoo, like Gandalf or something? These two skeletal like hand puppets came out as she was doing her crescendo at the end, and it whoosh, grabbed her, and the lights went off, and when they came back, she and the puppets were gone. I don't know what that's supposed to symbolize. Again, I think it's open to interpretation, which is what I love about theater. So I do love that there was some puppetry involved here. And of course, as the lighting person, which I always talk about on my channel here, I loved the lighting. I love that they used a cyc, that they weren't afraid to get away from the painted backdrop or a textured wall in the back. Not that I hate those things. I just don't want every show to do the same trick. So it was refreshing to see just a cyclorama, because you could change it with colored light. And the tree trunks that came down, they were hollow. So it's almost like picturing a bunch of lanterns, right? That's what they were kind of like, because they lit up from within. So the lighting was very creative and different. Oh, this show. If you haven't seen Into the Woods, if you haven't seen any version of Into the Woods, you need to see it. I mean, I've spoiled some things. Sorry. I can't believe I almost let this show pass me by, because I was just like, oh, it's so much money, and we have all these other shows that we're going to go see. I have way more reviews coming for you. I'm so glad at the very last minute I squeezed it in. Another great thing. This was the best audience I've been in a while. A lot of studies have shown that, especially since the pandemic ended, that people going back to the theater are much more rude, and people are complaining about other audience members and how awful they are. And I was experiencing that as well. I'm like, man, everyone's just like, so I'm like, was it always like this? I've been to the theater a lot. I don't remember being this agitated. I just thought it was my old age kicking in. Like, oh, I'm just cranky. Like, nah, be quiet. I didn't pay to hear you sing. This audience was so good. They were so good. Like, the minute the house lights went down, people clapped and cheered. I'm like, they haven't done anything yet. Why is everyone cheering so much? They cheered after like every major song. They were quiet. They laughed at all the jokes, because there's a lot of jokes in this show. I mean, it was so good. So good. It really helps the experience. Our seats, I just talked about the view. The seats themselves were actually comfortable. Like, the theater is an old theater. But we loved our seats. We were very comfortable. I think that's important too. Always, as you research, if you are like me, where you have like 3 or 4 or 5 theaters to pick from because of where you live to see a touring show, maybe make your decision based on what the theater is like. You know what I mean? So that's something to consider. So yeah, the theater experience itself was really, really good. The show was so good. I loved this cast. The other cool thing that was unique to this exact, not just this exact production, but this exact show, since I saw it in Philly, and at the time of taping this is still a thing. But there is a contract negotiation going on with touring shows inflation is affecting everybody. So traveling actors do need to pay for their own room and board and food and all this stuff. I did not know this. I don't know how tours work, but apparently the actors are on their own for big portions of this. So if inflation goes up, that means everything's going up for the cost for them as well. And the Broadway League doesn't, or whoever it is, sorry, I shouldn't misspeak. I should have researched this. I knew this at the time, but whoever's in charge of deciding how much more to pay the actors, they're fighting it. They don't want to pay them more. So they did this big push the weekend that I saw this. I saw this last weekend from taping this, that they were going to have cast members from all the touring shows in the area because Philly has a couple theaters, so Six was playing and stuff. So cast members were actually out in front of the theater, and it was like a reverse meet and greet. Instead of you going to a stage door to meet actors, here they were at the lobby door hoping to greet you and get you to sign their petition. So if it's still a thing, I'm going to link it below. So that we met the actor who plays Cinderella's father, and he also did a lot of the puppetry stuff because Cinderella's dad, that's a tiny role. He was so wonderful and fun to talk to. We also met an orchestra member. I think he played the oboe, I think. But it was nice to take a minute and just talk to a real working actor who has worked on Broadway and is working a tour, and they totally deserve to get paid more because COLA. I mean, those of us who are fortunate enough to have a COLA increase, you know, we all should get it. If those prices are going up, then our paychecks have to go up, right? So that was a nice extra little bonus thing about going to this exact show. So yes, if the petition's still out there, or spread the word some other way, if you love theater, we got to get the word out that yes, expenses are going up. That means their expenses are going up too. If someone has the means to pay them more for these contract negotiations, then if enough of us say we care, they'll give it to them because they know, hey, there's a market that wants to continue to enjoy these things. So let's pay them accordingly, right? So that's an extra little side thing. What else can I tell you about this show? I mean, it's so good. It's so good. Oh, one special cast note, because I'll link the touring cast. We did see an alternate Cinderella. We saw Ellie Fishman. She was wonderful. Loved her. Loved her, loved her, loved her. I mean, this show is just so witty. It's such a good time. I am so glad I let my kid talk me into going to see this because it's a well worth show. It's a very clever show. Now it's long. I think all of Sondheim's shows are on the longer side. This is a show, I have to admit, it feels long. Act one is great. It really zooms by, but Act two is kind of like really long, especially when we get to the end where one of the most well-known songs, if you don't know the show, is called, You Are Not Alone. And it's a slow song. So I get a little like, oh, I like that song out of context because the song is so good. Whenever I watch the show and I get to that point, it's not the 11th hour number, really the number after it is. So the baker is not that we really have a main character. This is truly an ensemble piece, but the baker is the closest we have to like, this is the one we're really following. He's having a crisis and he's having a confrontation with another character and he sings No More. It's really hard for me to sit through that song. I must admit, whenever I watch the pro shot, I tend to fast forward through that part because a little part of me is like, oh, which is really bad. It's really bad. You should not want to do that. It's just something about that part in the show. I get a little like, yeah, okay, we done. So I have to admit that the show was long, but this production was so sharp and just really, it clicked. I actually didn't mind it this particular time. I think I was just having such a lovely time and such a lovely experience. It was a beautiful day. We got great parking. We met a cast member. The audience behaved. I think if you think about all the factors that go into any one experience, your feelings can change greatly. If we had a totally different circumstance, maybe I'd be saying very different things to you right now. So that's another thing to keep in mind whenever looking at reviews for something or evaluating your own feelings about anything that you consume entertainment wise. So yeah, it's a long show, but I think it's just so clever, and it actually has a lot of good messaging, and it's so much commentary on multiple levels. So you do have to pay attention. This is not a passive experience. You have to be alert if you want to know what's going on, because there's a lot's going on. There's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of characters diving in and out and bumping into each other, impacting each other. There's consequences. It's a good show that talks about consequences, all that good stuff. I highly recommend. So it opened at the Kennedy Center, and I believe Philly was its second stop. I was only there for like 4 days or something, really short. So its tour is fairly new at the time of me taping this. So this is spring of 2023. I don't know how long the tour is going to last, but if it's coming to a city near you, I mean, I really recommend you go see it. I really recommend it. It's a good time. If you love Sondheim, if you love the show like I do, and you're only kind of thinking about it, let me be the one to push you into please go see it. It's so good. This cast is on fire. Yeah, it's a good time, and I had a good time. I hope you had a good time listening to me talk about this really awesome show, because that's what it was. It was awesome. I'll be back again soon. I have many, many more shows that I'm reviewing. I'm getting a little carried away, but this is all for fun, right? Gotta have fun in your life. Only live once, yeah? So, yeah, I think that's it for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye.